All right, all
Well,
right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. I'm Esther and I have with me Sage. So today we are actually going to be talking about Ark UI. So I'm very excited because in the past we've talked a lot about Chakra UI, and today we are talking about Ark UI and the support for Svelte. So if you're just hearing about Ark UI for the first time, Ark UI is actually a headless UI, headless component library, and it's built by the same folks that built Chakra UI. So if you like Chakra UI, chances are that you like Arc UI. And I think because it's headless, right, you have flexibility of styling Arc UI components however you like. You can use your favorite styling library. You can use Panda CSS and you can even use vanilla CSS. So today we're going to be showing you how to get started using Svelte. We recently launched support for Svelte 5. So Sage and I will be giving you a quick demo on how to build your Svelte apps using Arc UI, how to get started, and all of the good stuff. So, Sage, how are you doing today?
yeah, I'm doing very good. Excited to be here to talk about all this Svelte stuff.
Awesome, awesome. So, I think we launched this Svelte support about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, right?
Yes, yes. I think it's 2 weeks now. Yeah.
Okay, 2 weeks ago. So, I know in the past we had support for React, obviously, for Vue, for Solid, and now we have support for Svelte. So, Svelte is the fourth JavaScript framework that Arc UI is supporting. So, I think I just want to know, and I'm sure everyone else is curious about why did you choose to support Svelte out of all the other JavaScript frameworks? Why did you choose Svelte? Why was it like the next step to take regarding how Akira was going?
Yeah. If you go all the way back to I think there's a video I made about the future of Chakra UI. I think
Mm-hmm.
in that video I talked about one of the things we wanted to do. That's like 2 years ago now. I think, or even more, I guess. So in that video I talked about like where Chakra UI was going. And I think one of the key premise there in that video was about the fact that like I wanted Chakra UI to not be like limited by the boundaries of React in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the patterns, open close components, controlled uncontrolled, all of the patterns you have in React could easily be translated to other frameworks as well, right? So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where we got into the journey of like Zack.js and Panda CSS and RQI. But I think like the main idea was to prove that it was possible to actually build a headless component library that works across multiple frameworks without pretty much duplicating efforts everywhere. I think that was like one of the key things because prior to all of this, we had Chakra UI for React, and I had my old time friend Jonathan created like Chakra UI for Vue, and pretty much for one to one, including the state and the refs and everything was copied over. Pretty much made it hard to actually synchronize these two libraries because every time there's a bug fix or pull request here, you need to quickly update that one. And then it literally became a chicken and egg problem. So we had to go back to the drawing board to actually figure out how could we build out a system that can actually work across multiple frameworks. I think the biggest inspiration is a framework like Vite, where Vite is actually like a framework for bundling your application that actually works
Yeah.
everywhere. So that was a huge inspiration for us to do that. I think for Svelte, it's pretty much like, I'm naturally curious about Svelte, largely because
Mm.
it's a compiler driven project. So the Svelte itself is compiled down to JavaScript, which actually reduces the overhead and performances. Like, I would say that's one of the best performances you could get out there as far as like building your application is concerned, right?
Mm.
So Svelte was just one of the options to explore, I'd say.
That's cool. So wait, you had React first, then Solid, then Vue, and now we have Svelte. So in terms of, let's say, complexity, which framework was the most complex for you to map out for RQI? Is there any that you were like, I'm facing a lot of, challenges trying to finish this, or which was the most complex for you?
Yeah, I think Vue and Svelte were quite complex to figure out. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
that's because I mean, for years I've been the React guy for a long time, right? So I always love to make things in React. But I think Solid.js was pretty much had a close proximity with React in the way it worked. So maybe just in the way it looks also. So it was pretty easy for me to get a good grasp at like Solid.js and all the design implementations and details. It's fairly similar to React in that sense, but also somewhat, a bit more performant. Again, it's also compiler driven. It compiles back down to vanilla JS also. So, so Solid and Svelte have some similarities in the output that they
Mm-hmm.
generate, right? So, but I would say that like the key piece there was like learning the framework shenanigans as far as like the templating language, how they do refs, how they do state, how they compose components together. Like just that pattern takes it's a pretty much a steep learning curve to be honest. But I think one of the things that helped us with Svelte is the fact that we've got like a lot of like AI tools makes learning easier.
Mm-hmm.
So like we can kind of pretty much learn through this Svelte like LLM TXT. Just ask AI if you're pretty much like stuck at any point, and you can get pretty useful answers.
Yeah, that makes sense. AI is definitely changing the way we develop. I remember a few years back, there was no AI. You pretty much had to do the whole stuff yourself, right? Trying to figure it
Yeah.
out, jumping through different repos just to understand how Svelte works. For me, I'm a React developer, so I have actually never built a Svelte app. So I'm excited to see how to get started using Ark UI for Svelte. So let's get into it. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna pull it aside and walk you guys through.
Awesome. Let's get started.
Okay, cool. So this is Ark UI. So Ark UI, like you said earlier, is pretty much the headless. It's a headless component library that you can use for your design system, or not just your design system, your Svelte applications also. So Ark UI, is pretty flexible. It works in all those different frameworks. I think one of the key selling points, of course, for Ark UI is the fact that like one, it works pretty well across different frameworks. I think two is the fact that like you don't have to shift your mental model across the frameworks,
Mm,
right? You can see like the components are pretty much named the same way. The patterns are pretty much the same, except that they use like framework specific semantics. And for Svelte, Arc is built for Svelte 5, right, which supports this like dollar. We see a lot of this dollar prefix everywhere in Svelte. They're called ruins. I'm not sure why it's called that name, but I think the point is it's just some magic things that you don't import from
mm-hmm.
Svelte. You just like use it in your project, and it works pretty nicely. So that's really pretty much like the selling points. If you build on top of Arc UI, at least you're guaranteed that like you can use them across any framework of choice. If your team decides to switch from
Yeah,
React to maybe Solid or Svelte, yeah.
true.
Um, so yeah, I think like in terms of like demoing like how Svelte works, we can pick something as simple as say a menu, a drop-down menu component,
Okay.
for example.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much a drop-down menu. But then like let's see how that works. As always, when I read the docs and I want to focus on a framework, I just check the like drop down and just like pick Svelte. So that everything I see in the docs is just Svelte, which is a good way of exploring the RQI docs.
Yeah.
All right. So the thing you can see, of course, is you've got to install RQI Svelte in your project, and then you can import specific components. Right. So this actually makes it very tree shakeable, and you're sure that it's just the menu code that's included in your final bundle. Okay, so
Yeah.
so the docs are pretty interactive. We've got this stack plates icon. You can actually click that to actually open up your stack plates. I've done that already for the basic example, and you can see that here, pretty much, right? So I'm just going to run through this. It's pretty clear. So every component in RQI has got some sort of anatomy attached to them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So every part of that menu, the trigger, the item, the content, all of those, have corresponding parts in Svelte or in any framework in RQI in general. right? So I've gone ahead to put like, I mean, if you look through the package JSON, I mean, you see that I've got like Ark UI Svelte, the latest version there.
Yeah.
And then to pretty much use it, all you've got to do is just like import the menu and just like render the menu, and it works pretty nicely, like so. So you've got some, I mean, not the most beautiful menus, but at least very functional
Yep.
menus. Right, I could definitely go like pick a different example. So let's go like say something like, what other components would you like? Let's check out the slider component.
Slider. Yeah.
All right, so you could launch the stack plates for the basic example, and then we can just like go through the code. Again, you see that like it's just you import the slider from Ark UI Svelte, and you use it pretty much the same way you would use like a classic React project or something. I mean, I'm more of a React guy, but I've come to actually appreciate the design of Svelte, and I think
Mm.
it's also pretty solid, right? So there you've got it, like you have like a slider that works already out of the gate. Of course, behind the scenes of this, it's not like it doesn't look like this. It's pretty much because we've got like some
We've added
styling,
some styles. Yeah.
some base styling to just make it easier for you to kind of explore. And if you pay attention to one thing here, is like we've got these interesting attributes that actually help identify the anatomy of that component. The scope represents like the name of the component and then the part of that component also. So this is kind of like the root, which is kind of like the overall container for the component. It's got some styling for the control, which kind of like just holds the thumb and all this track stuff in there. Those are the styling, and I mean it goes pretty on like that, and just makes it like super easy to actually like test out the component. All right.
Yeah. So to buttress your point about styling, currently running a design system series. So on different components, different Arc UI components. And I think
Yeah.
what I really like this series is the fact that even though Arc UI is available in 4 different frameworks, you can literally grab everything, I've documented in the blog and use either vanilla CSS or Panda CSS, which is also a styling engine, right? It's zero runtime
Yeah.
styling engine, and you just slap your styles on these different parts and you have something really functional. You have a very nice menu, slider, or whatever. So if you're interested, I think I'll put the link in the chat. If you're interested, you want to check out the design system series for your design system or your use case. Yep.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. So let me. One thing I can show here is like the fact that it's built on top of Svelte 5.
Okay.
So one thing you can do is like, so let's say we've got a slider, and I would like to actually control. I want to actually like bind or like control this slider component. In Svelte 5, I mean, you can use like, I mean, the thing called like the state rowing. So this state kind of like, I mean, holds the value of the slider, and you can bind that value to like the slider root.
Mm,
Once you do that, you can pretty much like, okay, I've got the value, I've got access to that value. So this bind is like a directive in Svelte. So you could actually like more like the way state works in React, for example. And then in there, you could just like say like, I mean, let's do a deep tag and say like value is, and just like drop in the value in there. And we can actually like see what the value looks like. So as I scrub through, you see that the value actually reflects
yeah.
right there, right? So the key point there is kind of like, Svelte has a pretty neat syntax. Just like Aaron said in the comments, Svelte is pretty solid. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the point. I mean, all of this syntax is pretty cool. You could actually build your whole design system on top of Ark UI Svelte.
Okay. So I guess someone might just be thinking, okay, now we have Arc UI. Chakra UI is built on top of Arc UI, right? So
Yeah.
is there any time in the future that we'll have Chakra UI Svelte or Chakra UI View or Chakra UI Solid? Is there a potential for having any of this in Chakra UI?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can't. I mean, I'd say like it's definitely possible right now to do that. I would say like it's largely just like a manpower type of thing, to be honest. Because one of the things that we have in Chakra UI is everything that happens inside of Chakra UI, we actually automatically create a Panda CSS theme. So you could pretty much take all of the Chakra UI theme and actually use it in Panda. Right, so
Mm,
that's something I actually love about what we do. So you could actually like take that work and use Panda CSS and style your entire component library with Panda CSS also. So that gives you like a close enough Chakra UI for Svelte. Maybe not there yet, but of course it's possible to do that.
okay, awesome, awesome. So basically, everything you shown us here is that getting started with Ark UI Svelte is very direct. You literally install Ark UI Svelte in your terminal. You grab the components you need to use, paste it into your project, and style it however you want. So yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
exactly.
Any other thing you feel like Svelte developers should be aware of or should know regarding ArcUI or when they're building the applications? Anything you want to emphasize?
Maybe not. I feel like most of the things are already highlighted in the docs. So you just want to
Okay.
like at least, I mean, take a look at the docs and actually like pretty much follow through. I think one thing we do pretty well is like for pretty much all the components, all the docs are like pretty solid.
Yep.
Right? And like I say pretty solid again. Solid means solid. It doesn't mean solid JS. I mean they're pretty good.
Yeah.
So the point is kind of like it's very easy to follow. We also kind of like try to explain like how to programmatically control all these components because one of the key things with like using a headless library is you want to have control over pretty much the state and all the different parts of that component, right? So say the accordion, for example, I mean, it uses all this Svelte-like syntax, so it doesn't feel foreign. I mean, that you're using
Mm-hmm.
this Svelte application. Even a React developer, a decent React developer can look at this, actually understand that. So I mean, the key piece or the beauty of all of this is that they all look pretty much close to each other in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I also like about ArcUI is the fact that it has very many components already in it, right? Right now, I think the
Yeah.
number is about 45 plus components, headless components. So it's
Yep.
like it's really varied. The gallery for components is wide. So if you're that developer that you want to explore so many kinds of components, feel free to use ArcUI. And the interesting thing is that some of these components are present in ArcUI, like this splitter that you're displaying now, but it's actually not present in Chakra UI. So you can just decide to geek about the components and style it however you want, even if you're using Chakra UI already. So yeah, feel free to check out our documentation. I think one thing we do really well, which is what you mentioned, is that we try to give so many examples of what you can do with each component. So that way you're not lost. You have a very wide knowledge of how to use every component that you come across or that you're interested in using. So let me see. Are there any other questions or any other things you want to talk about? How can people start contributing? I know the immediate thing is to just set up, like create a PL to ArcUI, but it's important to always emphasize that so that people, are aware that we are open to contributors. If you are interested in contributing to the projects that we have, whether it's ArcUI, Chakra UI, feel free to check out our GitHub repo and open up a peer.
Yeah,
So
of course. I mean, I think the I would say like one of the biggest ways folks can contribute to ArcUI is to consider creating like some sort of like design system on top of ArcUI, even if it's open
mhm.
source, right? So I mean, you could take an existing UI library and just like use ArcUI to remake that component library. I think even if you've got like your company's design system, also you could consider like just build something. I mean, that folks can actually use as a source of inspiration for their design system. I think that's like one key piece that actually drives the community when they see that okay, this is actually like some sort of let's just call this Chucky UI, and this Chucky UI is built on top of Arc
Built
UI and
up.
styled
Yeah.
with like whether it's vanilla CSS or Panda CSS or Tailwind CSS, anything you want, pretty much. Yeah.
Awesome. So everyone has a question. It says is Arc using Zag for component state machines? Yes. But do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the only way we can make this possible. So yeah, we do use Zag under the hood, and I think the reason why we do that is because, like, I mean, every most of the logic of a component could be reduced down to something called a reducer, or you could also put that in the complex form of a reducer is a state machine, right? So we use sort of like a mega reducer or a state machine to actually like model the states and events and transitions. Like when I say state event transition, I mean when you click this, something happens, and when you click that, something happens. That kind of like sequential, thoughtful logic is what we use as the backing for IQI.
Awesome, awesome. And I think with using state machines to control component logic, it just reduces the amount of PLs and issues that you faced even for Chakra AI. I think we are talking about it the other day that when it was purely React based logic for Chakra AI, the issues were many because there were lots of edge cases that you couldn't capture. But using state machines is pretty much a very, stable logic based system. So the issues are a lot reduced, and it just helps you as a maintainer. You don't have to, close too many issues or maintain too many issues because it's very minimal, right?
Yeah, of course. I think even besides that, like one of the things I've come to see is that, like, I mean, AI systems actually love state machines a lot. So I could literally
Really?
take like, I mean, if I yeah, that's something I do recently. Like, let's say someone has an issue or someone actually finds an issue, I pretty much take that issue and just like ask, even if it's in Corso, I just switch to the ask mode and just like, hey, this is state machine and this is the issue. Like, point me, just tell me the transition that is faulty, and then he goes and looks at it and okay, tells me that okay, this transition is faulty, and usually it's always like an easy fix with state machine. So that's, I mean, it's somewhat, the word state machine is a cringy topic for most people, but I think once you, I mean, you don't have to know about state machines to use Ark UI. You don't even need to care about it. Like just
Yeah.
use the library and have fun. But I think from a maintenance standpoint, one of the ways we ensure sustainability of the project is to actually design things properly. And when you design things and engineer things properly, it's so much easier to actually like figure it out. Like when you drive a car, you don't need to know all the theories and thermodynamics and all these shenanigans going on. You
Exactly.
just drive it and use it. So that's how Arcure is.
Awesome. Awesome. Yep. I think that's basically it. We've been able to explain the whole ArcUI Svelte to developers. And hopefully, what we want to see is we want to see you get started with ArcUI, Svelte, React, Vue, Solid, any framework you choose. And if you're running projects on ArcUI, feel free to share it on Twitter X. And we just want to see what the community is building with ArcUI, with Chakra UI, with Panel CSS, and everything in the entire Chakraverse. Yep. So thank you all for joining today's live session. Sage, any last words before we wrap up, or are you good?
Yeah, I mean, just to appreciate those that I mean managed to join. Thanks for your time. Thanks for hanging out with us. I think, of course, give it a shot. Try RQI for your design system, and if you have any feedback, like I mean, we're definitely open to thoughts. Just open an issue, open a discussion. We're open to sort of helping you out to actually like solve any design system need you have.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Thank you, everyone. We'll catch you again in another live stream. Bye.